Awesome talk, awesome talk. We got some awesome talk today. Awesome talk, oh, awesome talk. You'll like the way we talk. It's awesome, awesome talk, oh, awesome talk. You like the way we awesome talk. It's awesome talk, fucking awesome talk. You like the way we talk. It's fucking awesome. Woo-hoo. Yeah.
This like new rule of if you had a vaccine, you don't have to wear a mask in public anymore is the most infuriating thing I've ever heard in my life, because it's just going to be a bunch of people that are anti-vaccine walking around talking about how they're vaccinated so they don't need a mask anymore.
We're live, folks. Welcome. We're live, folks. Welcome to Awesome Talk, quarantine edition number 28. So that's a lot of quarantine editions. We are live here on April 30th, 2021. Tonight we have a very amazing show for you. We have an incredible guest for you, Skyping in live from India by the name of AR.
And her camera is unfrozen completely now.
I love it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's great.
Seems so, yeah.
So welcome to the show, AR. Thank you so much for doing this tonight.
Thank you so much for you. Like, you guys are doing this right now, so thank you so much.
It's absolutely our pleasure. Our pleasure. So I know everybody on the show has a million questions. I know people are starting to tune in. Rob is in, Gary is in, more people are coming. And I know people have questions, and I'm not even sure where to start. So go ahead.
Can I make a suggestion? Because you actually posted earlier, and I said you left out details for anyone who happens to live under a rock. Because I think there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that don't pay attention to world news. I think there's a lot of people in our country that if you were like, oh, there's a tragedy happening in India, it's terrifying. There's a lot of people that are like, what do you mean? What's happening? Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And most Americans usually, if you say, oh, did you see what's going on? It's terrible. Most Americans will say, was it a bombing? That's like a sad reality of just what it's. I just feel like
that's the same thing. It's the same thing in India also. Like, if it started the situation, it started in April. So I was like always making posts about it, and no one was bothered until media started talking about it. So people are dying in India, but Indians don't care, and all they care about is how Pakistan is trying to do something in India, or how another Islamist nation is trying to do something somewhere. That's all they care about. So it's a very universal thing to have these kind of things. Like, it's always who killed whom rather than how people are dying of poverty or something. So it's always there. It's a very universal thing. It's not just Americans or people of a particular country who do it. It's always there. It's always there. That's what I think. So, like, sometimes I think that especially Americans are too hard on themselves. Like, yeah, seriously, you guys. It's a very universal thing. Like, it drives me crazy just thinking about it. Like, we've been having this situation since April, March end. And I remember one day, I have this mutual friend. So his name is Gary. So I remember I was panicking and having an anxiety attack or something. And I was like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I started texting him just so I can just release my frustrations. And I was like, I had this really sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. And it started like slowly evaporating because I was talking to someone. Now I'm a bit fine because people around the world are talking about it. So I'm thinking like, okay, now it's getting the attention it deserves, because I've like seen people dying on the roads, not like myself, but videos of them dying on the road, people dying because they cannot afford healthcare and stuff like that. So it's very frustrating. And it's not just like people are very until it affects me, I don't care. They have that mentality. So it's really, really frustrating. Okay.
Yeah. So one of the things that I heard, in the news, especially in the last year, was at one point India kind of looked like they had COVID under control. Like it almost looked like it was a, like something to emulate because India seemed to get it, contained. But then I feel like in the last, first off, I don't know how true that is because I feel like information on this planet is released in bizarrely more regionally than people think. And it's also like it goes through a filter before it gets to you. And then like in the last like month, like all of a sudden, if you're able to catch it, because things are getting pulled off of Twitter, they're getting pulled off of Instagram. If you're able to catch it, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we're back to burning bodies in the streets. Like what shifted? What changed that made it so I don't know, intense again suddenly?
This is just my take of it, so I'm not sure how correct this is. But what happened was, since the vaccine released, I've seen a considerable spike in the cases. I think that people have started getting a bit like, okay, vaccines are out, so everything is under control. Let's go about it. Like they're not wearing masks like they used to. They didn't like they're not in quarantine and stuff. So this has started escalating. That is why I think there's a spike in cases. Also, I think we had these problems since Feb. Okay, so since Feb, the cases have been spiking, and it has only gotten the attention that it deserves now. So, and I think it's so important because we were trying to get people to like their attention to these issues in India, but it took a lot of time. And then suddenly in this month, suddenly the international media is like looking at it that way. So that's a good thing. I think it has been bad, and I think we had it under control, but the actual numbers have been grossly misreported. So there's this example. I was talking with 3 gentlemen, and they were talking about how they went to an airport and they got them tested. So all 3 of them were COVID positive, but only one person was getting calls from the government. That means they took the test and they didn't register all 3 of them as COVID positive. Only one person got registered. So that's how it got misreported, underreported. That's one issue. I still think that there are a lot of people who are COVID positive that are not registered, and that is why it's like it. I think we can never fully realize how big the number was because it's so underreported. I really think if people actually got around it, people will actually think that India was the worst affected country due to COVID. So
Alexis in the chat just asked how much is India receiving vaccines and what percentage of the country was vaccinated, I guess, as this was unfolding.
We started this drive, like vaccination drive, and people were like, it's so successful, like the PR machinery of the government, it's so successful, we'll conquer the world or something. It's like, don't toot your horn before you actually do something. So it was
Right.
like that. It was so frustrating. And all the people were like, the pro government people, they were like, we have done everything, we're saving other people, because we have been the biggest manufacturer of vaccines and stuff, so yeah, in the world. So they were like, okay, we'll do everything, we've saved other countries, we'll save ourselves and everything. And then it went totally out of control. It was so bad that we don't have vaccinations right now to vaccinate everyone. What happened was, they said that they launched this drive from May 1, and they'll vaccinate everyone, right? But we don't have vaccines to vaccinate anyone. How are they doing this? They've like set up a site that you can register for vaccination. So I don't know what that is. That's not that never works. So you don't have vaccines. How are you going to vaccinate someone? Like, this is the question that we should ask, and unfortunately our media is not asking, because it's pretty much under the government's control. It's really frustrating.
So we have another question from the chat, which Alexis said, "Are people open and interested in the vaccine and believe in it?" And for a little background, there's like an entire population of people here that are anti-vaccine. They think it's like a secret way of implanting things into your body from the government, and like their microchips and this. And do you have a problem with that there?
I think if you know something about Asian culture, they're like, they want you to become doctors, but they don't want to go to the hospitals. So it's always that case. People are always like, I'll make this tonic at home, I'll drink it and I'll be fine. So if it's not that kind of thing, it's always that I don't need to go to the hospital, I'm immortal. Basically, it's that kind of thinking. So yeah, we don't have like, I think that more than 50% people might not get the vaccine ever. Might
Wow.
not. But the remaining 40% of us, that's a big number, right? Because
Yeah.
India has a huge population. So I think anyways, if these guys won't, then we would at least. So yeah, there are people who are like, they don't want to get it, but then there definitely are people who want to get it, and they've been desperately trying to get it. So I don't know how will we fill this gap between demand and supply, but that's an important issue that I want the government to take up.
How much of the vaccine process would you say has been mishandled by the government? I mean, I guess that's not really a fair question. I would say all of it, but India is the largest exporter of vaccines in the world. So
yeah.
What is the sentiment now regarding Modi's party and the re-election that's coming up pretty soon? Are people still open to having him be prime minister, given all that's like going on? Or
there's this thing about Indian people, they're very emotional, okay? So if you can kill them, but they'll still love you. It's like that with people. That is why it's so frustrating, because you can see what he's doing, what his government is doing, and there'll be people who will be like, "Aayega to Modi, like he'll come again. Only he can come." So people, first of all, he's a very good orator, right? So people get very pumped up when he's speaking, and he addresses the majority. Majority of the people are like pro-Hindus or stuff like that. He appeals to that. So that is why people are more attracted towards those ideologies. Like, people in India want places of worship more than they want healthcare. So it's always this frustrating issue. And these politicians know exactly where to play us. So they always do this. And we end up electing these guys again and again and again and again. And if you see, you will realize that in India, we don't need an educated person to stand an election. So people who have no degrees, nothing, can also stand in an election and win. So our parliament is basically, like, I was reading this stat, and 32% of those have a rap sheet. So it's that bad. Like, we are electing rapists and murderers in the parliament.
You're essentially saying that you're at a point where your government has no administrative qualifications to the point of people using logic and true information to make decisions and implement laws or follow up on public security. I noticed that the vice president of your medical association called out the prime minister over all of this. And how was that affected? Like, how was that publicly being taken? Because we had a similar situation, but it was a very silent situation between our director of medical affairs and our president at the time that was speculated and talked about. But at no point in time did our main medical representative open his mouth publicly and state anything that would embarrass the person who is basically the head of the government at that time. So just out of curiosity, how does the public feel about that? Or how does the news cover that association between the two of them?
So there's this whole IT trollers that like basically get behind you as soon as you speak something against them, especially people in higher positions. So people are always afraid because there is so much hate around, and the people will be like giving you death threats, rape threats, these kind of things. So it's very hard for people up there to speak. So I don't think I expect a lot from them. Like what we can do is, because we are the ones who elect them, we can educate ourselves, and at least we can put some pressure on the government, because it's a lot, like a billion above population and stuff. We can do a lot of things just by like collecting together. So I don't think we need someone higher up to say something, because they're not safe if they do. But it's always appreciated, I think. So it's good, I guess. It's not good for him though. But
Do you
it's good
I
for us.
mean, do you honestly do you think that then there will be repercussions for him being
Yeah,
public
of
about his
course.
feelings? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. People get transferred all the time. They get demoted. Like there was this Supreme Court judge, no, High Court judge, who was very critical of the government, and he got shifted from the capital to somewhere else. It was a good place, but he got shifted like within weeks' notice. It's like that. No one is safe. Basically, I was reading this really interesting article where Modi and his regime is like xenophobic, Islamophobic, right? So his followers are mostly that. His troll armies are mostly that way. So if he tries to be a bit chummy with Muslim people, that his own followers start like
Turning on
he
him.
faces, yeah, he faces a backlash.
So
So
he
it's
has
that.
to play a role even if he does want to be diplomatic. He has to certainly he has to cater to his following and
Yes, yes,
put,
yes,
because
yes,
we
yes,
have a question,
definitely.
and Alexis asked in the chat, will Modi give help and vaccines to Hindu people and block it from Muslims?
No, he can't do that. Not right now. He
He can't.
cannot.
Okay.
He cannot. Yeah, that's not possible. Even if he wants to, he cannot do that. So that won't happen.
But
No.
it is more about the persona. It's about how he looks to the general population, because the
It's
following that he
always,
does has is on that extreme of, this is how we want it, this is how we see it, and this is our representative. And he kind of manufactured that, is now stuck at that position, basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. It's not just him. I've seen people around me always trying to maintain their image. Like, it's so important to them to look a certain way, be a certain way. I think it just carries on. And I think it's really important for the politicians to have a certain image. But then it actually, I think it's very counterproductive. Like, you don't have to have only a certain set of beliefs, right? You are in life, it's not possible. We are very flexible with some things, and we are very rigid towards certain things. So I think it's really, really counterproductive to have these boxes when it comes to politics too. So I think as a culture of politics, I think it's not working for us. I think we should change it. I really think so. Especially these things in India, I think it gets really frustrating because we are like just staying still. We are not trying to change anything. And it's time, right? We have this amazing opportunity because we have like a bird eye view over the world. So we can change it right now, but we are not changing it. And then there are politicians who are like, if they try to change something about them, they will face this backlash. So they'll always be the the image they try to portray. So that's something that's really frustrating. Yes, and I say frustrating a lot because it is. So
Sounds
I
like
can
it's a
I
pattern that's happening throughout like every democratic country right now. It's
Yeah.
like the same
Mhm.
thing. They're using religion to go against science. They're using it's all the same tactics across the board. It's really strange. It's
Yeah, it
going
was
on
it's
um
this
you can
past like 10 years,
Pat,
14
your point is something I was also thinking about, in terms of, we're listening to a description of this, and it's something you would expect to hear in certain areas where you know of autocrats, right? Where you know of distinct autocrats or dictatorships. And India has a prime minister with a parliament, and the democratic government means nothing in that regard, because even the words that are coming out of her mouth as she's talking about it, all I can think of is the country I live in.
Same here.
Hitler did the same thing, right?
Well, when
Hitler
you
was
say something,
elected.
so when you say
Yeah,
something like that, that's what a lot of people in America thought about our leader at that time, was that all of the same
you know,
sort of rhetoric and dismissal of things, and then the pandering to a particular very specific group of people with kind of gaslighting comments and xenophobic, anti-nationalistic rhetoric turned
yes.
people into obviously more nationalistic and rejective people of others. But now during a pandemic, it's only escalated and exponentially grown to a split in a doubt of anybody other than that one person, and a putrid hatred of everybody else that didn't believe in the way you thought. And it's
I
because
think
of that leadership.
I think this has been happening since the past 8 years or something. Like the shift, if you notice, like in India, it started in 2014. Then I've seen it happen in 2016, and then with Brazil and with Italy, and you can see with other countries as well. So this has been the trend, and I think US politics affects the world a lot, right? So you can see how it has affected other places. Like right now, since Biden came in, we have a lot of international media scrutiny over India. It was absent when Trump was there because Modi and Trump were like a bit alike, so, and they were pretty chummy. So I think that's what has happened. Prime Minister Modi is not. He does not have great relationships with Canadian Prime Minister, right? And now they've like everyone has been like getting together, and they're like, let's screw India up now. So we have considerable media attention now, which is good for us, at least for me, because I'm not like pro nationalist or something. I love my country, but not that way, right? I don't believe in extremist views, so it's good for me. As long as people look at us, we will be forced to change things about a country. I think that's great in that sense, but I think US politics will affect a lot of countries in the world, and that's what I've seen happening, especially since Trump came in. People in India started getting more on your face. Like it was definitely that shift I've seen.
I don't mean to cut you off, but I have to ask this question. Do you feel that, based on what you just said, and I can completely understand it, that while American people view their country in a nationalistic sense as something that leads the world, that kind of dictates to the world, that they beat their chest and they set the examples, and we know that in pop culture and in fashion and stuff like that, music and stuff, all of that kind of comes out of America and then spreads through the world in this kind of leading the charge kind of mentality, right? But would you say that, based on what you were just saying, that our response to COVID and our response to just a global pandemic, our view on other countries and how they do it, and our isolationist kind of mentality, and then our arrogance about it, and our leaders' public worldwide talk about it, and dismissiveness of stuff that's obviously shown on BBC, it's shown on world news, it's shown on, so everybody knows what Trump was saying from the very beginning. And this isn't about Democrats and Republicans in the United States. I'm solely asking this from the perspective internationally. Do you feel that response and the stuff that the media covered, both in how people did or did not care for this virus, regardless of whether or not it was a global pandemic, that it set a precedent both in political freedom to speak about things that maybe people didn't talk about before in a common conversation in India, and act a certain way with around people because they saw what they saw and how Americans were acting and how Donald Trump was talking?
I think that it definitely affected, though it didn't affect that much because Modi was always like, you need to wear a mask, you need to follow social distancing. He was trying his best, even though I saw Trump basically saying the opposite things. But Modi was always trying to do the right thing, right? Wear a mask, social distancing, don't go outside, follow the protocol. So he was saying the opposite things, right?
Right.
But I certainly think that he became a bit complacent later on because he thought like we have everything under control, and he stopped trying to make things work for the COVID situation. That is where it got bad. I don't think it was as brazen and bizarre as Trump did with the whole COVID situation, but it definitely needed something else from, I think, Modi at least.
I think that what you're saying in response to that, and anybody else that's on the show or anybody's in the chat, I'm just kind of curious because it sounds to me more like what I'm seeing in certain states, more so than what I saw from Trump. What it sounds more like is how our individual state governors handle things. And in this regard, at a current rate, it sounds a little bit like what's going on in Florida, where the governor kind of was all responsible for whatever he needed to do to get the country behind him and make everybody okay in the media, and then suddenly just kind of is like, all right, enough of this. We've lost revenue, and people should go out and hang out and party. And if you're gonna get sick, you're gonna get sick. You should know you're getting sick when you go out there, and everybody else can lose their loved ones, and so on and so forth. And the complete denial brought back. It started first with the wrestling, pro wrestling, and then it started to leap into other athletic events, and then eventually it turned into a full-blown spring break this year, where numbers have escalated incredibly. He issued a state of emergency, and it was kind of like, oh, what did you expect? The blatant dismissal of it, which was way beyond anything our president had done prior to that. Each state seems to address its population, and a population in that state was very adamant about, well, why can't I go somewhere? Why can't I do things? And then Florida has become almost like a poster child of insanity for political leadership for people that are from a very concentrated state such as New Jersey. We look at it and go, what are you doing? And it's unfolded to a point now where Florida's numbers are rising dramatically, and it's turned into a point where, well, this is what you get. What did you expect? This isn't a game. And yet there is a need in our country, obviously, for those individual state representatives to side, as you put it before, with to watch how you speak about the person in power, because you'll lose your political career. It'll be over. In certain cases, in other countries, they have to worry about just falling off the face of the planet. But here it's basically you could shut down everything, and it just sounds a lot. There's a lot of, I think, parallels between a prime minister who has to compete with public opinion, but also has to deal with someone, deal with the medical field and the rest of the world, and kind of interpret that for an entire population. Our states are like that.
These things are really universal. So you'll always find parallels between things like these. Like wherever you go, whichever leader you're talking about, you'll always find things that are similar. But I can't say that Florida's situation is totally like ours. Like, I think that the onus of this lies on us as well as the government. But it's that kind of thing. Like, the government is like a parent, and we are like its children, right? So we can fall, but they can let us fall, but they have to take care of us after that. So there should be measures taken, like, in place. If we fall, we have to have that care and love that we deserve, right, as children. So that is something I find missing in this government. It has stopped doing that, because it had around 1 year to invest in infrastructures and whatnot, but it did not do that. And this is something I've always found missing. Like, people, especially these people in the government, they do not care about investing in the infrastructure. That is why we are behind a lot. And I think more than anything, this has actually come back to bite us on our back. So it's that thing. It's definitely the infrastructure. Then people are pretty stupid here. if I may say so.
Well,
Yeah.
I have a systemic question for you actually that I find kind of interesting. So like with all of this going on, we're talking to you on Skype, and you have
Mm-hmm.
you've obviously got you understand you understand that as you're saying that the population are stupid. We know quite well. I heard Rick laughing in the background. We know what it's like to have a majority of the population who's kind of like
Stupid as fuck, yeah.
clueless and very loud about everything, even though they're clueless.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
arrogantly clueless, happily
I'm
clueless.
thinking, oh yeah, happy to be unaware and still yet be very opinionated about things of which they have no, mental background in.
But that's a very universal thing, right? It's
Sure,
common.
sure. So my
Apparently
question,
more universal than I thought.
yeah, right,
It's
right,
I
right.
think I think people actually think that it's not like that. And people sometimes like I am this smart, so other people will also be that smart.
Right,
They
right,
have that
right.
kind of thinking, right?
I,
That kind of logic behind it.
I'm
But it's a
curious
very
as to
universal thing. Stupidity is universal, right?
yeah, oh yeah, and
Yeah.
that to that point, I'm curious and I know this has been outlawed for 50 some odd years or whatnot, but is there an impact in terms of caste systems in India with COVID? The knowledge level of what COVID is, and really just intelligence level in general in terms across the board. Has that impacted anything? Because as long as it's been outlawed, it was like 1948 or something like that had been legally outlawed. But everybody knows that India in many parts still carries that caste system distinctly. Has that affected it? The
Yes,
whole
of
industry of
course.
it?
I think we should know that there are some people, healthcare workers, who will reject people of lower caste. They'll not treat them. They'll not allow them to enter the hospitals, the premises. So that happens a lot, especially in the rural areas where that's a lot more common. Like people will not touch you. People will not eat what you're eating, and stuff like that happens. So they definitely are more affected by things like these because they die more, because people are not ready to touch them. Like, how
Right.
will you cure someone if you're not ready to touch them? So it's always that way. That is why I think there was this interesting uh, observation my mom made. She was like, India has poverty levels that are really, really alarming, right? People die of poverty and hunger every day,
Right.
but it's not considered a pandemic. Suddenly, COVID is here, and everyone is so mm, like alarmed about it, because I think that is the thing, because middle class people and the rich people are also affected by it. I think till it affects us, we do not make a bigger issue out of it, because poverty, and there are certain illnesses that happen a lot in India, but it's
Oh,
never
so
an
you
issue.
you you're basically saying that COVID now has leveled the playing field in terms of awareness and understanding that you too can get
No,
sick, right? Or no? Because here it
no, no,
hasn't.
no, 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 no.
Here it hasn't
I
affected
was,
anybody.
I was replying to that caste point,
Oh, okay.
like how people of smaller castes and poor people dying is not the same as COVID, even though we have considerable number of people dying because of poverty and hunger.
Oh, so the
But
awareness of it, it's still just it didn't change anything.
it didn't change, and I think it's really interesting that we are here talking about this right now. We're talking about COVID, but we never talk about how poverty has been affecting us since I don't know when.
Dude,
Oh
the same
yeah,
thing
a
here. We don't
hundred
talk
a
about that
hundred
here. We
years,
sweep that
right?
shit under the rug the
Yeah,
same way here.
we have a
Yeah.
big problem here with the acknowledgement of when one of our biggest deals was, and we don't same things here. No one's asked that question at all about people on the streets as this is happening, and they deal with everybody walking around consistently. And at the end of the day, nobody in government ever wants to talk about poverty levels or wealth distribution, and it's incredible to me because we are both in democratic countries, if you will, and
Mhm.
ex-colonized countries. People think that, well, you must have everything together. You got it all considerably together. And the funny thing is that as America, the complacency and the arrogance of being American for the most part, and understanding that there are poor people and there are rich people and there are intermediate people, don't realize that we have a lot of things in common with the caste system that India is known for, even though it's outlawed, but also is relatively, I mean, in America,
we just don't call it that here.
We don't
instead
call it
we
that,
integrate
right,
it into the culture from the time you're born and then pretend that we don't.
Right. We had to
Like I think this is again a very universal thing
right.
in human beings, right?
Right.
We have this name, it's called caste, but there are people who are like, they have this status, like people discriminate based on status. So there are people who are discriminating it based on race, majority, minority, and there are certain levels. Like it's almost as if we miss it if we do not pay attention to it. But it's a very universal thing. Like humans always need to feel good about themselves by saying that I'm better than the other person. I have a very big issue with this mindset. Like, why do I need to compare myself with other people to feel great about myself? I think that is one of the reasons that these things have been so universal in our nation or around the world, is because we have this mentality where we need to be above someone to feel better than them. If we do not have that need, we will not care about what is the person's skin color or what caste he's from, what language does he speak. I think this is something that is really fueling our needs to have that kind of feeling towards someone else. So I think, and this was, while I was listening to you, I recalled something. So I was watching this a short documentary, no, not documentary, some video about the serial killer who was targeting people who were of the poor community, and they use this in the US. So he used this term to describe it. They were called less dead.
Yeah.
So they're poor. So when they're alive, they're not that valuable to the society. So when they're dead, they're not dead, they're less dead.
Less than dead. Yeah.
So
Terrible.
Yes.
AR, I want to just go into the chat because there's some questions here from some people. Muhammad asked 2 questions. Number one, he asked, how prevalent is the denial of access to healthcare due to the low caste status? And he also asked, is it illegal in India to deny someone healthcare?
It definitely is illegal. You cannot. But, we have such a huge population that it becomes really difficult to track everything. So it happens a lot, especially in the rural areas where people are like more towards this casteist mentality and stuff. So it happens a lot there. And we cannot track everything. So it's rampant, it's underreported, if reported at all. So we cannot control it. So I think, there will be people who will be saying that you are of this caste, we will not give you vaccines. This will definitely happen, even though I don't know it about it right now, but I can almost say it certainly that happens. Yes. I think I answered both the questions, right? I did?
Yes, I think so. Yes. There's other questions in the chat too. Let's see. Alexis asks, are ventilators and oxygen not available all over India or in more rural countryside locations?
Okay, so the rural places will always have a deficit of everything because our healthcare in the cities is not up to the mark. Then just imagine what is happening in the rural areas. So it's always that gap between the supply demand and that comment that I made about how people do not invest in infrastructure. So we are always lagging behind in healthcare. So I think if you see a population with the pandemic going on and everything, so you'll realize that we are having a deficit of everything right now. We don't have anything. because our leaders are not interested in investing in us. So we have this deficit of everything. I think if the numbers escalate a bit more, we might have to beg for everything from everywhere, from every country around the world. It will be that bad.
How much of that you think is owed just because of colonialism? I mean, I feel like Britain should be helping, France should be helping.
Great question.
Way more than what they already are doing.
You know, I do not expect anything from any other country, but I do expect a lot from my own. But since I've seen my own leaders not caring enough, I don't think I can expect anyone else to care enough about us. So it's always that. Being like, if my dad does not care about me, how will I expect another person start to care about me, right? So even if we say, for like, they've colonized us, they've taken so much away from us, so they are responsible, morally at least, to help us. But then I see my own countrymen not taking care of us. So how can I ask them to take care of us, right?
There's a question in the chat where somebody's asking if the government would be blocking other countries from helping you. Do you think that that's a possibility?
That definitely is. But you know, I don't know if you are aware of it, but we almost went to war with China last year. Right?
Yeah.
So
that would have been a horrific war.
I think we would have died if that would have happened. So I just read this yesterday that Indian government has allowed Chinese government to help us during this pandemic. So the blocking thing, I thought India will not take help from them, but they've definitely taken help. I don't know about Pakistan, if they will allow this from the Pakistan, or if they have, I've not read about it yet. So I think that they can block assistance from certain countries. If they don't, that will be a very good move, because we need everything we can.
I wanted to read a comment from Lawrence in the chat. He wrote, even while we ourselves don't have a quote-unquote caste system, the system itself is still very classist, with institutions made to keep people in their particular class. It creates its own cycle, and arboreous as those who are poor cannot afford proper health care, food, or other maintenance in their lives, which results in more problems down the road, which costs more money, which results in more poverty. It's just not something that is talked about here because to certain people, the system, quote unquote, works fine.
I think this issue, even with caste system so prevalent here, we sometimes brush it aside. Even with our system, where it's so visible, we brush these things aside. So I don't know if people where it's not named, there's no term for it, will ever pay attention to these things. I'm not really sure how that's going to happen. I think it's there, it's on our face, it's staring us right on our face. If we just pay a little bit attention, we'll understand that how prevalent it is, not just even in our homes it happens, right? There is always, we can always equate every world problem to how we see our families act. If you just see your families, how the inner politics like work out in your own family, you can understand how politics works out on an international level, even, because we are the same people. We have the same feelings, we have the same mindset. They all came from us, right? Yes, exactly. So that is why some people are so impressionable to you and some people are not, because you know, we can always find similarities between the world leaders and our own home. So it's always that we just have to pay a little bit of attention, and then everything will sort of unravel, because it's so universal and it's so there, even in little spaces in your life. You just have to pay a bit of attention. I think that's all.
Sure. Carl Callan, he said this Modi sounds like a vain egomaniac. Sad there's not consistently solid leadership like here in America. That was a joke. Gary said Gary said, do you think the future generations in India will start to change things more than the current parliament/leadership?
I've definitely seen the shift among people thanks to social media and stuff, I think, largely because of that. So I think the future is brighter, but I'm not sure I can see some substantial change happening till the next 50 to 60 years. So it will take time here because, our population is so big. It's really difficult. And I think it will take a lot of time. And we have to definitely change the way we educate people because it's a lot of studying this subject, that subject, but a lot less of how things affect you. So I think if we try to change our education system, we will see a definite change among people. Like this is like I can only speak for children who are of impressionable age. So if I think if we just change the education system, we can make greater leaps towards different future is what I think.
I
That's
agree with
my
that
opinion.
100%. Rob said, I heard that the Biden administration is taking notice and allegedly looking into sending aid and possibly a certain amount of vaccines from our backstock. We shall see.
That's very interesting. Modi and Biden are not on the best of the terms right now, right? So I think we spoke about this yesterday, right?
Yes.
So Biden very grudgingly sort of is sending us aid, and that too after a lot of hue and cry from big celebrities and stuff. There was this time where he was like, no, America first. And it makes sense, right? Why will he have to do things that our government should have done for us? It makes sense, right? But in this era of global relationships, it's always this pressure on us to help other people, other country when they are in need. So I think this is something that's pretty great. I really thank social media for it. That it has like somehow brought this collective ideology sort of thing that we should help other people more than I've seen it before, right? And I think it's because we have this bird eye view over different international issues. So this has been really a good thing for us, I think, if we put it that way. But Biden has been like he really grudgingly allowed those things. He didn't want to, but he had to because the pressure was so undeniable. This is like politics, right? Have you ever seen in your family the same thing happens? Like your aunt might not want to help your uncle, but then people are forcing her to help. So it's the same thing. It's bunch of aunts and uncles sitting in important positions, making decisions for us when they really don't. Maybe they need some therapy or something before they actually take those positions up. It's like that kind of thing. It's seriously that kind of thing. Like it's like everything I've seen, how people act.
What an incredible analogy. That's
yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's so universal, right? Everything you can see in a very small unit in your family, you can compare what is happening in international scene because we are all the same. We have similar emotions, we have similar reactions. So you just have to pay a little bit of attention and you'll see the whole thing playing it out. Like
you
can
are
even
so
guess.
right. You are so right. Like there's family members I don't even know how to communicate with right now because of politics. Like and I see it on a big scale, like a national, now apparently an international scale, where it's like the problems that I'm dealing with within my own blood seems to be the problems that the whole world is facing. So like that analogy is perfect.
It definitely helps you understand how politics run because I've seen so much. Like we have this joke in India, you don't have family trees, you have family forest. So because we have so many people, right? So it's always interesting to see this huge crowd of people and trying to guess the inner workings. sort of like how relationships play out in that network. And I've seen that reflecting on people who are holding higher positions. So it's always helped me understand more, because it's almost the same. What I feel, you will feel too, in different proportions, but we'll feel the same thing, right? So we can understand this way how international politics work. It's interesting. I think if we try, we can understand a bit more. Yeah. I don't know where I went with this, so sorry. What was the question again? Sorry. I hope I answered the question. It
I
was
think
about
you did.
Biden, right?
I think
Yeah.
Yeah,
Alexis-
in doing so, turned into a humanitarian.
Another question was: are there enough healthcare workers there?
No.
'Cause, like,
No,
okay.
no, we don't.
Is there another national lockdown, or is it just like each state is doing its own sort of thing?
You know, this is such an interesting question, and I have this opinion about it. So I don't know how correct it will be, but this is just my opinion on how things have unfolded so far. So we had this big lockdown, right? If you are aware about it, like it was hugely successful, as they've said. Because of that, the repercussions of that lockdown, we cannot have another lockdown now because people were dying. You strip people off of their financial stability, so they don't have that financial stability anymore because they were working. Most of the people in India are daily wage earners, so they have to like work every day to have food on their table. So in the previous lockdown, that Modi, he came one day and he was like, tomorrow is lockdown, guys.
So there was
That
no,
was it.
there was no,
No,
there was no, there was no assistance. There was no food distributed. There was no anything from the government to assist in the fact that those people who couldn't go to work for 2, 3, 4 days, a month, 2 months, suddenly were not only poverty stricken, they were starving. They literally,
nothing.
so starvation affects your population more than
Yes.
COVID affected the population.
If you're not aware, there was reverse migration. There are a lot of documentaries about it. So people were moving back, and because nothing was working, there were no railways, no buses. There were people who traveled 2,000 kilometers on foot. I don't know how that will play out in miles. I think 1,500 miles or something. They covered 1,500 miles on foot. So it was that kind of thing because they didn't have any means of transportation. People were dying on the roads, and people didn't have food to eat. And the government was very frustrated. Like, not frustrated. It was frustrating for me because I've seen people dying like this, and the central government did not acknowledge this for a month. So people continued to die.
Wow.
And they were traveling, affecting their health and everything,
It's
that
like
sort of thing.
It's
Right?
a forced march of desperation to get out of a certain area and find resources.
Yes. How will I don't know if
how
I have.
does the media cover something such as that? I mean, with the last desperation kind
Great
of pull
question.
This is something I wanted to talk about, because the media is in the pockets of the government. There were very few mainstream media that actually covered it. There are people who covered it at the grassroots level. There are some incredible people in India right now who are giving coverages to these kind of issues. I think they need more popularity. I think I definitely do, because they're doing
a bigger platform. But are they risking their lives though by
Yes.
reporting that stuff?
Yes, of course. They can get killed any time.
Because I had noticed there was a similarity to something that happened here, and I think it was back on the 15th or 16th, somewhere in about the middle of April, that BBC, because BBC's been following this, BBC records this on World News. There was a big party, a huge celebration at some point in time. I don't know what town it was in or what municipality but it had happened, and the way that BBC had covered it was the same way that we hear in American news every time there's a house party or like a big concert or something like that, where people ignored COVID lockdown to enjoy themselves. And you had mentioned earlier how people kind of got frustrated and felt, well, there's minor vaccinations going on, we'll go back to our normal lives. And that's essentially where we are as a country. when the media covers those type of things, are they controversy, or are they directed to make the government look caring, or like the
Yeah,
government
it's
being a good
definitely,
parent?
they cannot show anything that says otherwise. The government is good. The government is the best government we have ever had in this country. Like mainstream media cannot say anything otherwise because their owners are associated with this government. So they cannot do it. And there are very few channels who started reporting it widely, and then other people followed. Other news channels followed. But for a month, a solid month, it was not reported. So people
When it
died.
is there a theory of, and just curiosity, because we have such a big following of conspiracy theory, has conspiracy theory infected India's media mindset or social media mindset,
question.
or
Yes,
is
yes.
there, because here it's QAnon, it's the alternative to there's a huge
reality.
national conspiracy behind that, and what gets people who are people who tend to be critical of that are thinking to themselves, well, that would be a worldwide conspiracy. So how is that kind of information received? Where you're, like the area that you're from, or nationally.
Basically, people go into denial, first of all. They're like, this is not happening. And if it's happening, I don't care. I still like Modi. And related to the conspiracy thing, they've definitely played it out in India. It's something like Hindu khatre mein hai. It means Hindus are in danger, right? This has been the tagline. Like, you tell me, a majority Hindu population, how can it be in danger in India? Like, how? It's something I've seen leaders always do it quite smartly, but they're definitely not getting smarter, because they always use the same tactic again and again and again. It's like always like you pick someone up and you start bullying that person, right? To become more popular, right? It's the same thing that a class bully does. It's the same thing a government does to get into power. And it's the same thing this government has done to get into power. It has said that Hindu khatre mein, Hindus are in danger, and Muslim people are someone who are like threatening us, our existence, because they'll somehow multiply at such a speed that they'll overtake the Hindu majority population. Somehow they'll be the major people, like majority population. I don't know how. I really don't know how, but that's how it has played out. So it definitely is that way. That is why people are like pro Modi, because they think he's the savior. He'll protect them from
They
that.
believe in him as a defensive
This is-
mechanism
Yes.
against
this
an
is-
oncoming religious overtaking.
Right. This is hauntingly familiar to us.
Oh,
Because,
100%.
Like
like I said,
sickeningly.
right? Like I said, right? Our
less,
leaders
with
are not.
with very less extreme consequences, though. That's the problem. Is that their consequences in terms of things that they bat an eyelash at when something bad happens would never fly here.
Is that true though? Because when COVID started, I remember the refrigeration trucks for bodies. I remember mass graves, and I remember people pretending it didn't exist. And now I look at India and I look at burning bodies, and I'm like, dude, like, oh my god, like it's more similar than I ever believed than I ever knew it was.
Like I've been saying, it's universal.
Right,
our leaders are the same.
Right.
Our reactions are the same.
I just mean in terms of the coverage and the repercussions of the coverage, our media gets away with a lot that openly, our freedom of speech element in comparison to India, in terms of when people say things, the popularity level saves their rear end. Like if they were to go missing, disappear, or something happened to them, or there'd be threats, or they'd be ostracized, there would be public backlash for the popularity of those people, and someone would have to be investigated. Whereas
in India, that doesn't happen.
Right. It's just, and see ya, and you don't ask any questions, right?
That's something I think I blame on the population of our country. It's it's really difficult to manage a country with such a big population, such a large population. That is why it becomes that much more dangerous for us to open our mouth, say something. It's almost bizarre. It's really frustrating because, like, a person is trying to say that I need oxygen for my mother, and the chief minister of a state is saying you can't do that. It like confiscate his property because he's spreading lies on the internet. So that has happened.
The Twitter
So
block.
the Supreme, no. It was like we have this huge COVID India, SOS COVID thing, hashtags going on in India. So where people are trying to raise SOS requests on Twitter, right? So there is a state called Uttar Pradesh. Okay. So the chief minister is from BJP, the party Modi is from. So he's the head of the state. So what happened there? He was like, there is no shortage in UP. Everything is fine. Everything is that way. So he was trying to build up this image. But on Twitter, the situation is pretty revealing, right? We can see what is happening in UP. So there were people who were raising those SOS requests. So this chief minister said that you cannot do that. You're spreading lies and misinformation. And whoever does that, I'll confiscate your property. That is what CM said. And he has done that before. Believe it or not, he's done that like multiple times.
Earlier this year too, right? With the protest, the farmers' protest.
Yes.
A bunch of stuff too.
Yes. Yeah. So he got away with it. Can you imagine that happening in US? Like a leader of yours says that if you say something about me, I'll confiscate your house. Can a leader do that in the US? I don't think so. But here they can.
Not directly.
No.
But there is but the crooked ass shit that people do to people here is so, like, it's interesting because having this conversation with you, I realize how similar our situations.
So many things ring as like
my God.
But I gotta say in regard to that statement, I think I think what's interesting about the statement you just made is that so our current population is just over 330 million people. The current population of India is what, 1 billion? Like it's
and it's underreported.
It's underreported.
Oh, that's underreported too, huh?
So you think it's over 1 billion?
It's
easily,
definitely.
So over a billion people in India, and you have to think of the proximity of India in comparison to the United States. And
can I say something about the world map?
Please.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. Like, I watched this video where people said that the current world map we have is not correct because it does not represent the size of the countries properly. It is a very white map. So people who wanted to, like, people who have who used to have trades with other countries, they highlighted those countries. So the size of India that you see on the world map is not the size.
So you're saying in terms of the people in power and British and Dutch colonialism are the ones that...
No. I'm just talking about how you cannot understand how huge India is on the map. It's definitely a much more complex and much more larger state than you can see on the map.
They
right?
do it to Africa too.
Yes, correct. If you see it that way, if you actually see the map, you'll see how huge India is.
Right.
And if I have to explain India in a sentence, it's like a continent rolled into a country.
Perfect right? Geographical representation. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really bad at geography though. Okay, so I think
that was actually dead on.
Dead on.
Especially when someone made a reference, when you make a reference to Africa and you look at how many of the continents you can actually fit into Africa, or how many of the countries you can fit into Africa.
Yeah, exactly. Africa is
it's absurd. And India, often because you think of India as, I think people in their heads don't visualize India. They have this kind of notion in their head, and that's about it. That they look at it from a cultural notion rather than actually the geography of India, and it's very telling for you to say it that way. It's an eloquent way to say it. That you don't really, you look at it a map and you say, oh, there it is, but you're not comparing it to the rest of the world and go, that's a fairly large place, and that's a fairly large population for a government to kind of, and we take it for granted. We really do. In our country, we take it for granted that our population, we think we have too many people here. And our country,
have you just walked here in my neighborhood, right?
We're like, we have enough. Leave the immigrants out of this. And you're like, what are you talking about? There's endless amounts of room here.
Endless.
Endless. It's just like there are so many areas in our country that aren't even populated, and
no one there, dude.
There's countries around the world that are overflowing to the point that they can't even administer healthcare. They can't, forget talking about free healthcare. They can't even get it to the people because there are people literally dying in line to be helped. And the arrogance of our country to live like that, and also the arrogance, as you said, in your country to disregard some of that, is just blatant. It's just blatant, and it's terrifying. You would think that, forget aid, like that there would be logical people saying, how am I not on the world stage? How, when news media starts to cover it and it's not your local media or your domestic media, what do you do at that point? And people just let it go by the wayside. No one does anything about it. That's the real question. Where are all the international influences that should be making change?
Do you mean the UN? That does
not. I mean, you said the UN? Yeah, and then you laughed after it because at the end of the
laughed
day,
appropriately.
Come on, and if there wasn't a bigger piece of propaganda,
yeah, it's sad. You would think in this age of globalization that we'd be more on top of things.
It's just infuriating.
That's on us. That's on us. If we want people to work for us, we have to make them work. Sort of like I say this about my manager will sit on top of my head and make me work right. The same way we are managers of these leaders. We have to work. So we need to have that kind of awakening of sorts, that we realize this, that we are their managers. They're there to govern us. They're not there to rule us. So we have to make them work for us. And for that, we have to be always on the top of our game. Like, we have to be really aware of what's going on, what our needs are. We have to elect wisely. We have to choose wisely. And then once we elect them, we have to make them work for us. So if we start doing this, I don't think so there's any leader in this world who can not do what we want. We can make them work for us.
Can I ask you something?
That is something, yeah, sure.
What made you personally so open and awake to what's going on? Because I think everybody on this show kind of lives in a country where we kind of look around at most of the people and go, why in the fuck would 75 million people try to elect Donald Trump a second time? And we all have our reasons and why we think the way we do, why we get along the way we do, why we understand things are fucked up. So for you, in where you are, what makes you so open to all of this?
So a lot of it is related to Buddha. I am a Buddhist. I'm a practicing Buddhist. So I follow his theories a lot.
Did you say a practicing Buddhist?
Yes.
Okay.
So I've been a Buddhist by birth, and I've practiced Buddhism, but it's definitely not the Buddhism you understand. Buddhism has a lot of varieties and ways that we can practice it.
Sure. I
have my own way of following it. So this is one thing. Then my parents were very, in tune with the communities. in tune with what is happening around us. So I always saw them, and I sort of took it for granted. I thought everyone is like that. Everyone thinks about the other person. And then when I started talking to people, I realized, oh, that's not it. People sometimes look at me like I'm a freak. Why am I having a panic attack because someone else is dying? Like, it's so unheard of for some people, but it was so common for me. It was like second nature to me because I've seen my parents do it. I've seen how Buddha left his house. He was a ruler. He left his house to serve humanity. I've seen examples of it and I've followed it. So I have this view that we should have better understanding and better knowledge of what is happening in around the world, so that we can have a better understanding of ourselves. So when I try to understand other people, it's because I want to understand myself more. I don't know if it makes sense.
Totally, it makes
I don't
sense.
know.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And another question that I had was, are you, not just personally, but people you know, are you kind of pissed off, or how do you feel about the idea that American politics and culture has such a huge impact on the rest of the world, including your own country?
Pissed off. I sort of think of it this way, right? It's always like that. There will be some person, even in our family, that we look up to, we follow, right? It's the same with US and US politics. But of course, with US, it's things like there are a lot of things happening. Like, definitely, there are things that we cannot see. There is a definite influence, and there are people who are actually making everything work behind the scenes. You cannot see them. They're not leaders, but they're there. And they're influencing other countries to act a certain way. Like, they've got you by the balls or something like that. People say that it's a conspiracy, but it is a reality. Like, not the way QAnon says, but it's a reality that a lot of things that are happening are not in the hands of our leaders sometimes. It's always this global issues, and these globally things are being controlled globally nowadays. So it's a result of that we are looking towards US, and US politics is affecting the rest of the world. It's frustrating. It's definitely frustrating because I don't want to be played like a puppet, but unfortunately I live in a world where I am being played, right? So I'm always fighting against this because I don't want my life to be controlled, but I can't do anything about it. So all I can do is make myself aware of what is happening around the world, what is happening around me, so that in case I get into trouble, I can do something about myself. So that's all I can say. I don't know if I answered your question.
Absolutely, 100% you did. 100% you did. Did anybody read this comment yet from Alexis? Is the country seeking or having medical staff from other countries to come and help? We had medical workers come temporarily to help New York when we needed it. I would, of course, argue we still fucking need it. But I'm curious how that's going for you guys.
That's been happening. I don't know if they'll ramp it up or not, but that's been happening. Yes.
Man,
I don't know if you guys have paid it. I don't know if you guys heard recently. There was a conversation about Florida, right? And I hate to keep using Florida, but I have friends that are in Florida.
It's a good example.
But there was a conversation about Florida where they were talking about they didn't want Florida to end up another New York. And I kind of took that. You read it and you roll your eyes at it because the way the media starts to write about things in the United States, it's kind of like, well, what does that mean? Because it's always got some political connotation behind it, right? Like there's always some New York is democratically run, and there's some, it's falling apart, and yet no one takes into account that it's one of the largest metropolises in the world, and there's people, on top of each other 24 hours a day in the name of commerce and financial institutions. And I can't help but keep making comparisons to everything you're saying to the way that individual states around here look at other states that are trying to do the right thing, that are trying to do things. And it all comes down to the bridge of, what does somebody look like in their political association? What will they have to deal with in terms of reaction by the populace or reaction by their political affiliates, and how will that come off? Up until now, because for our country, it's kind of like our domestic affairs are our domestic affairs, and the international news covers our president, it covers our federal affairs and stuff, but not really individual states. It's not going to go about and cause a big fervor over that. But for countries that are not in the United States, right? States are here. In the countries, those countries have one main news outlet, and the news outlets outside of that cover it as a full country. And you guys are so big with so many different areas. Is the media grasping how diverse the situation is in terms of, like, here in the United States, you could say, well, Trump said this and Trump said that, or Biden said this and Biden said that, but nobody really knows what Alaska's going through, New Jersey, California, Hawaii. Like 50 different states is 50 different countries under one umbrella. India is India, but India is huge, and
Huge.
The politics are dramatic, and the notion of imperialistic governments and the overview of all of that America doesn't deal with, and is arrogant about the fact that they don't know anything about that. How does that fluctuate all the interpretation of that stuff? Because it has divided our country statewide in terms of how people view each other in states. How does India as a whole have its stereotypes of different, areas of India with all of that?
This is something really embarrassing. So, okay, I'll say it. So, we have like around 28 plus states, right? And they're divided by languages, like most of them at least. So you can see a definite shift between the facial features, the skin color, the body type from north to south, east to west. Like it's very different. South Indian population is has a darker skin tone, right? So there was this minister that was talking to the media about the rise in hate crimes when it comes to Black people in the capital of a country. So he made this I'm so sorry. He made this comment regarding South Indians that you think we discriminate towards like Black people. You know we live with South Indian people, right? If we live with them, how can we discriminate against Black people? It was, I don't know if I can.
That sounds really American. That's some real American thinking right there.
No, but it's so bad. Like Black people are a different race, right? South Indians are a different race, and they are from India. Where is this discrimination coming from? Why are people from another country being juxtaposed with the people of our country? Like this is the level of discrimination that happens within our own country. I don't know if I'm able to explain it properly.
It makes sense.
But, it was like that time where during the apartheid, slaves from India were given a higher level status than Black people of the country. It is kind of like that. Like it's so unfair. I'm not saying the same thing happens in India, but it's like, why are you comparing Black people from Africa to your own country?
Wait, can I just interject there? Did you just say that Did you just say that there's a combination between apartheid in South Africa and what was going on? Oh,
No, not at all, not at all. No, 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 no,
no,
that's
no, no,
not.
no. I didn't mean in terms of the comparison, but I mean, were they instituting that same type of mentality where there was a
Yes,
segregation, if you will, of
yes.
people? Okay, yeah, I didn't mean
Like,
in terms of the system.
no,
I meant in terms
I
of the
don't want
conflict
to, like,
between.
I don't know how to put it, like, well, this thing, because it's so embarrassing that this happens in India, but we are separated by languages, we are separated by states, we are separated by how we live, our culture, everything differs because, I told you that it's like a continent rolled into one.
Mhm.
So it's so different. And because of that, like, difference is always like, when there is some sort of difference, people will always be like, no, my difference is better than their differences, right?
It's
So
like colorism almost.
it's like
Sort of.
that. So people are so different that they start discriminating among our own population. It's so bad. I don't know if the same thing happens in US,
Yeah.
but it's really bad in India. Like, it's so bad that you're trying to put someone's language down. Like, in the past couple of years, they've been trying to make Hindi the main language of the nation. That is not the case. We have around 400 plus languages and 2000 plus dialects. So in a country like ours, can you make Hindi the main language? Like,
I can
just
tell you
imagine.
honestly, from our perspective in this country is that there is I wouldn't say a large majority, but there's a solid population in the United States that believes that we are of one train of thought, one religion, and one dialect. And for anybody here who's ever been in a grocery store, you've overheard somebody say, well, why can't you just learn the language and become an American, right? And
All the time.
people don't
Right.
ever take into consideration that while our language is the language of trade and it's the globalized, accepted language, it's the hardest language in the world to learn.
No, it isn't.
No, I'm saying transitioning with the slang.
No, that's bad. That's like blasphemy. No, that's
Are
not
you
the
saying
case.
that you have it? Are you saying that you have it? You have the hardest one?
I've been learning Japanese. Okay.
Japanese
Oof.
harder. Yeah.
Okay. So I've like, since I learned Japanese, I can read some of Chinese, Mandarin,
Dang.
Cantonese, right? I have friends who are Romanian. I have friends who are Polish. So if you ever look at other languages, you'll realize how hard they are. Especially languages which are from countries who are not like, they didn't have trades with other languages or were isolated. Their languages are very hard to learn. So Scandinavian languages will be harder to learn than English. English is rather, it's a very popular language. It's a very popular language. It's definitely not the hardest.
Can I say something as an English professor?
I didn't mean
As an
in
English
terms-
professor,
Yeah,
the one thing that I
sure.
want to say about English is what a garbage language it is sometimes, though. Like, we take words and put them together. We're like, oh, we're hungry and angry, hangry, and then we put it in the dictionary, and it's like, how the fuck do you describe this to other people in another language?
I think what I meant to my point was that it's not hard to learn English if you're learning English in its purest form. I think that America, exactly to
Right.
your point, has we over the course of time, over a course of generations, 20 years at a time, has deteriorated the value of the language by just throwing around its slang has
Or
or
we have maybe shown how amazing of a language it is because of how much we can throw all these WWE wrestling moves at it.
terminology. I mean, when Oxford
Make up
Dictionary-
words on the
Dude,
spot.
when the
Language is
Oxford-
always
when the
changing,
Oxford
right?
Dictionary is
Right, you're right.
adapting Fucking text
Right. So it might be something that, to you as a professor who has learned a certain type of English, you might think that okay, this is like really pointless, but just imagine if Shakespeare will come and he'll read the language that you studied. What will he think? So you always need to have that perspective over things. Like language has to change. If slang is the new language, then it'll become the language.
Totally.
So you cannot be like my language is my version of the language is better. It's always like language is always changing. That is why you cannot understand the language. Like if I try to read Hindi that has been written 60 years back, I cannot understand it because it has changed so much since then. And it's always this way. It's always changing, always evolving.
Sure.
So I don't think it's fair to say that it's garbage. I think languages are pretty interesting because it's a reflection of who we are. Like, I'll give you this example. I have studied English and Hindi all my life, right? I speak both the languages. So these languages are pretty direct. Okay. But when I started learning Japanese, they're not direct. They will not say, please, can you do this to me? Do this for me. They'll say, won't you be able to do this for me?
Yep.
And that is how, that is a reflection of how they are, how their nature is,
do you think
and how
it's a
their
reflection of
personality forms
respect?
out.
Do you feel
Sorry?
do you feel that's a definition, like an example of the respect level that they have for each other?
See, sometimes I think that languages force you to have respect for someone that you don't. And I think a language that does allow you to have respect towards the people you want to be respectful towards is a better language, in my opinion. That's completely my opinion. I can't say for other people. But if you are forcing through language to have a certain kind of thought, or to be like, if it holds you in a box, I don't think it's a very good language. So if a language is trying to make you be more respectful towards other people, I don't think that's a very good language. Like, this is totally my opinion. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
You totally did.
Like yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So do you feel that like, go ahead, Rick, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, please go ahead.
I just meant are you saying that language, in a sense, it'll lead us down a wormhole? It's going to lead us down a wormhole.
Like, I think languages are really, really important, and they're very beautiful, and they're a reflection of how we turn out to be. So I think that I might not be able to say that any language is garbage. I can just say that some languages will try to, like, kind of
evolve,
to say that, bind you towards a certain way of life. There are certain languages which does that. So that is all I will say when I'll say regarding languages.
Sure, I totally understand that. Yeah.
I want to read a comment from Gary. He said, we actually met AR through the show Sensei, and it reflects in AR's outlook. She's about building bridges, not walls. Proud to call her our BFF.
Come on, Gary.
Can I just say so far how amazing you've been on this show tonight? You've been phenomenal on the show tonight. Phenomenal. And I feel so lucky that we were able to have you on tonight. So I have a couple of questions. Number one, what is it about India, or what is going on in India currently, that you feel is misrepresented, or something that you wish people knew?
Everything is misrepresented, underrepresented. I want people to know that people are dying and crying on the roads. I want people to understand what is the scale, like, especially with the statistics. I have this, you know how during the Holocaust, they gave a number to prisoners instead of a name?
Yes.
Like, it takes away the humanity from people.
Of course.
The same thing statistics do. you can read a statistic that 33% of the people are infected with COVID, but they're people, right? So it takes away that point of humanity away from you. If you see people in statistics, like 3 lakh people are infected with COVID every day, like they're people. We have to put in uh, um, more feelings into it somehow for other people to actually understand the gravity of it. So I think that everything needs proper representation and more reporting, so that's to say. Yeah.
I just want to say that, Rob said in the chat he's so damn proud. Alexa said you've been totally amazing and thank you. Madison said everything you said is so true. I want to ask everybody on the show right now, do you have any questions that you haven't asked that you'd like to ask? You feel like
no. What I originally wanted to ask her was just to make sure and ask her what she felt was the most important thing to get across that maybe she doesn't feel is being talked about. But I don't know if I feel like maybe she already answered that.
Yeah.
But that
Everything.
yeah.
Yeah.
When you said, you have to give a face to statistics because it's almost numbing when you just see numbers every day. Like it's numbing, and there's like a level of separation between the number and the idea that those are actually people. And our governor here started doing something started last year, and he still does it. I don't know if he does it every day, where he will post a picture of someone who died from COVID and talk about that person's life and that person's family. And it's basically for exactly what you said, to make people aware, like, these are your neighbors, like these are your family members. They're not just numbers. And I've seen a lot of backlash from that, where people are like, you're fear mongering. You just want people to be home and be scared. And I thought it was I really was surprised when I saw him do that, because I thought it was a pretty unique.
Disturbing?
Disturbing to see your neighbors, dying around you. But I kind of paid attention to the fact that he was willing to at least attempt to put faces to these numbers, and even more surprised to see how many people were like, you're just trying to scare everybody. And
it's the same here, people are like, why are you spreading so much negativity?
Yeah,
be more positive.
Right?
Yeah. It's definitely like, you don't want to see your laundry being aired, right? That's your problem.
Yeah,
That's
isn't
not
that
mine.
kind of what it's almost egotistical. It's
Yes,
like
definitely.
And then once you meet someone who you knew, when you come across someone you know who was outspoken about the negative side, like, don't believe it, it's not real, whatever, all of a sudden somebody they know gets it, somebody they know dies, and then you're caught as an empathetic person being like, am I supposed to have passion for you at this point? Because I know what you said to me at a point where I had a mask on and I was being careful, and now I'm supposed to feel sorry for your loss when you promoted everything that was against what I believed in. And that's scary, to try to remain peaceful with those people and go, I want to be respectful, but didn't you? And you can't even say it. I don't want to.
Yeah. Painful.
You don't want to ruin a friendship. You don't want to point those things out, but you know in your heart of hearts that person was totally on the other side of the fence, and you're stuck like, man, I wish I could still care about you the way I did, but you had this coming. Like, you knew this was going to be
right. And can I just say something to that, Rob? Alexis in the chat just said the culture in the U.S. is selfish, and people are worried about themselves, whereas places like Japan have respect for others, especially elders, and willing to do what is necessary to protect them from illness. Her question to you, AR, is how is the culture there in regards to that?
Um, it's definitely a mix between selfish and, regardless. Like, you will have people who are picking up their friends who are COVID positive and taking them with their hands because there's no ambulance. So they're risking their own lives to get you to a hospital. And then there are people who will see you dying on the street and they just walk by. So there is definitely a mix of people and the emotions and the reactions. Like, till it affects you, you will not bother to look into it. There are people like these, and then there are people who are like, okay, what can I do? Because I've seen people here, young young kids, like college people in college, running groceries for people who are COVID positive, multiple houses. There are people who are checking up on people they do not know who are COVID positive. So there's a lot of things about that's a lot that's saying a lot about humanity in general, because we have such a mixed bag of people everywhere. So I can't say that I've seen only bad people or good people. There's definitely this mixture of people in the reactions regarding this that I've seen.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. Are there any other questions from anybody on the show? Anything that you were burning to ask that you didn't ask yet?
I don't think so for me. I'm just really happy that you agreed to come on, and thank you so much for spending like your whole morning with us basically.
I talk a lot, if you do not know by now. Like,
Well, you're on a talk
really,
show, so it's perfect.
I kind of
so I
wanted to
speak
know,
a lot.
I kind of want to know about the border situation with China. Is that still going on with
Yeah.
the whole
Yes, that's still going
intimidation
on.
for Taiwan and all that?
Taiwanese in Hong Kong, the situation there is pretty different than what's happening in India. But definitely, it's this thing that is like, India is saying that this is my territory, and China is saying, no, this is my territory that you have. It'll be like it'll get into a lot of, it'll become a history class if I actually tell you about the whole situation. But the thing is that both of the countries are trying to say that this is my land, till this part is my land, but the other country is saying, no, this is my land. So the basic fight is for territory, and I don't know what they'll do with it. I don't even understand. So they're fighting over that. And one interesting thing I've read about this situation is that the Communist Party in China, whenever they're faced with situations that show them that that is like how to say that, anything that makes them look weak, they come down like harder on other people. So to keep their image as the world leader, they're trying to show that no, we can conquer India too. We still have power. That is why they have doubled down on these things. Like, this is not my thoughts. I've read it somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, a person, I think he was I don't know, I think he was from Hong Kong or Taiwan. I don't remember. He said this. And I was like, that totally makes sense, right? Because people do this, especially leaders. When they, because, because of the COVID thing, many countries have like broken their relationships of China. So to show that we're still powerful, they're doing this even more. So in the last year itself, you've seen how China has doubled down their um, sort of power on countries like Taiwan, on countries like Hong Kong, and on country like mine. So I think that's definitely telling of the whole situation. My opinion.
What about all those fishing boats that are encroaching in India's waters and stuff from China too? Do you guys have a serious issue with that, or?
It's always been an issue. Like, if you know about these Mumbai attacks, 26/11 Mumbai attacks, so the terrorists came in via boats, right? And they got into our the capital of Maharashtra, Mumbai. It has the film city. It's like one of the most populated cities in India, and they got in through the boats. So it's always been this issue that we have, especially because we don't man our boundaries properly. Like whether it's like it's the borders with Pakistan or the borders with China or Nepal or Bangladesh. We always have that lack of manpower. And I think it's due to lack of infrastructure that we do not have that. So it's always been an issue.
Mm. Wow, so they're just bringing troops in with fishing boats now, huh?
Like you'd be surprised that Indian media did not even acknowledge Chinese intrusion. Neither the parliament, no one. This situation went on for I think 6 to 8 months without a formal acknowledgement.
Wow.
Wow.
Damn.
It's the same with Modi, right?
That's mind blowing.
I think right. I think
yes.
I'll have to check it, but it was a long time. They didn't acknowledge it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it
they
definitely
get
is.
some balls to be in just walking up in other countries like it's no problem. Like
I know, right?
Yeah, man.
Yep.
It's crazy.
India has done that too.
What is the public reaction to something like that in terms of solidarity? You know, like if something happens here, we'll go back to like something like 9/11, where you have something similar to an invasion. There's solidarity. There's like
it really had this. They banned TikTok. That's what happened.
Wow.
Yep, I could see that 100%. A lot of truth on TikTok. They don't like that. They didn't like Trump. Didn't like that either, man. Trump tried to ban TikTok. He fucking failed at it, but they don't like that. TikTok's too real.
No, actually, I was just saying that how little was done. Like banning TikTok. Are you fucking kidding me right now?
Sure, yeah. but in terms of media, a lot of truth on there. So they got something to fear. Like I always say, that government's biggest fear is culture.
Yeah,
it's always the biggest
definitely.
fear. Because
this is very interesting that how North Korea does not allow South Korean media and stuff. Yeah. The same thing happened when the relationships between India and Pakistan basically there are no formal relationships anymore. So what we did is we stopped having athletes crossover. We cannot play. Like they cannot have sports tour in India, and we cannot go there. So that was the first thing they came down heavily upon, because what is common between all of us, like among all of us: music, movies, sports. So when people try to cut you off, they'll cut these things off first, because it has the pulse of the mass in it. So that is something I definitely noticed that it has been done.
Can I ask you in regard to that? This is just my own curiosity, but cricket is huge, no?
Yeah.
And soccer.
Do you know how baseball is like a version of cricket?
Right.
Right.
But it's a severely national sport, and it has gambling implications and financial implications, and it's a pretty big deal, right? So was that not going on?
Basically, the international cricket community is in the hands of my country's cricket association, because my country's cricket association is that big. And I watched something and in which the host said something very interesting about this. He said something like BCCI is stopping cricket from getting into this Olympics, because it'll highlight the sport and then more people will come in. So their hold over it will loosen, right? Their grip will become loose. So that is why they're not allowing cricket to go into Olympics. Something like that I've heard.
I have a question about that, by the way.
Hmm.
The cricket isn't there like some sort of national tournament that's going on right now, and all the
Yes.
players, everybody's being tested. Isn't there some backlash regarding that too? Because I think I read somewhere that like there's some states are struggling with even getting tests out the door. And so there's kind of like this backlash against that cricket tournament because they're testing all of these players.
You know, it's really bad because people, I am really against it happening. But there are people who like, in these times, we need distraction.
Yeah.
Cricket is my life. I cannot live without it. So you cannot take this tournament away from me. So it's definitely those kind of people who are more. So there's like there is backlash, but it's not very huge, is what I'd say.
That's crazy because that's kind of how it is with almost every sport that we have. Like we're allowing it to happen, and people are like, yeah, and it's
they
not,
enjoy it, right?
well, yeah, but what I'm saying is that the conversation for or against never elevates to a level where there's people protesting against it. You know, there's people that judge people that go to the games. There's people that want to go to the games. But as a thing, that's part of our popular culture. So like opening the doors to that is very oddly taken here. It's tolerated in ways that I don't think it would be in certain places. But then again, in certain other places, their national sports are like one sport or two sports. Those are the ones that they're strong in, and that's what draws the crowds for financial implications. Here, that's one of our biggest things. Like that's a multi-billion-dollar industry across the nation, and it builds up international commerce because of the jersey making and all of that. So like it impacts our economy in ways that I don't think the United States understands as a whole in their population. They just go to the games and enjoy the entertainment, but they don't realize, like, if you look at how much countries put behind the infrastructure coverage and the ability to make those things happen, when you have a national sport where it's one or two, and that's what draws everybody, especially when it's an internationally competitive sport all the time. We have a lot of nationally competitive sports. Other countries compete against each other. The revenue is enormous. So this has had to impact India and surrounding countries that compete with India in that kind of sport in its revenue, because that's one of, like, if you're like to throw 5 things at a certain country, that's in the top 5 of what a country runs off of revenue as in terms of
cricket is definitely
yeah
it's definitely big that way.
So has there been a financial impact in a way that it hurts the country as a whole?
Cricket right now, it's not hurting definitely, but it's like, really, right now, is this the right time? It's that kind of question, right? What are you doing? Like people holding election rallies while cases are spiking. What the fuck are you doing? It's kind of like that, right? It's frustrating that way.
And that was all over the news, right? Those rallies were all over the news.
Oh my God! Have you seen this religious gathering taking place?
Huge.
Yeah.
Do you know how irritating that was? Because you know, this was supposed to happen the next year, like in 2022. But these pundits, they were like, no, it should happen this year. And at what cost? Can you imagine? Like, so many people, we already have so many people coming together at one place that is pretty congested, taking a bath for fuck knows what, and then infecting other people. Like,
yeah, it's one of the most holy Hindu festivals, and I think it's one of the largest religious festivals in the world. But I think they said that they canceled it last year, and so they said, we're going to do it now.
I read something about that. It should have happened next year.
But it's
next year,
2022. Yeah, because
They held it before, 1 year before,
right every 4
something
years,
like that.
and I don't know. It's
10
something
years, I think.
like astrological sign.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. That's pretty frustrating. Yes.
Yeah.
So
I can't imagine.
I just want to say I just got a notification from somebody who's watching the YouTube feed, which I don't usually pay attention to. But I just want to say to the motherfucking idiots on YouTube who think that leaving racist comments is going to fly with us, I'm going to delete every goddamn dumb fucking thing that you fucking assholes say, dude.
No. Just
Go
keep
ahead.
it there. Just keep it. Just let them speak.
Let it sit there? Let it sit there?
Yeah, it's fine. It is a reflection of who they are. So.
You're right.
Yeah.
And they're weak and stupid and like I said, I just got a notification. Huh?
It's all right.
No, I'm not engaging anybody. All I'm saying is that if you think that shit's gonna fly with me, it's not going to, and I'm not gonna fucking read it either. So have fun with that, assholes.
It's just so stupid when you think about it. No,
Somebody's actually literally sitting there thinking that that's a smart fucking important thing to do. Yeah.
No, not even that. It's just like we're all here. We're all sitting somewhere on the world, on a rock,
right,
flying through space.
Right.
We all are going through the same shit. We all have bills.
Right.
We all pay taxes.
100%.
Why?
100%. Why? Exactly. Why? Why?
If that's what you choose to spend your energy on, I guess. I mean,
exactly. AR, I want to ask you something. One of the things that we reserve for guests on the show is something called the final word. So if there's something if you had a moment right now where you could address the whole world and leave the whole world your last message, what would that message be?
Namaste.
Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I also really want to say thank you so much for being on tonight.
No, thank you for having me and talking about these issues. That was really nice.
You have been absolutely phenomenal on this show tonight. And I sincerely hope that in a couple of weeks you'll come back and give us an update about what's going on.
Hopefully it'll be good. So, yeah.
I hope
Sure.
so. I sincerely hope so. Is there any other questions anybody on the show has?
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
You stay
Thanks
safe.
for your time.
And I hope
Yeah.
better.
Thank you so much.
You have been absolutely phenomenal tonight. Absolutely. And as
You
far
know
as
something about me, I'll say I am not very good at handing compliments. So it's like, no, please
I'm not
stop
either.
it.
I'm not either. So I understand. So let's take it as a professional criticism then.
Okay.
You came onto the show tonight. You have been presented with a myriad of questions, and you did a phenomenal job tonight, talking all night, and you made this show one of the best Awesome Talk episodes I could ever remember. And we all greatly appreciate you being here. And I thank you,
so
and I'm
much.
sure that everybody on the show right now thanks you for being here tonight. Everybody who watched tonight, everybody who shared the show, everybody who commented tonight, we all thank you so much for taking the time to just be here with us and to just talk about the situation and what's going on. I think that you were amazing, and there's a couple of comments I want to read really quick, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'm sorry, I had to navigate away for a second. Hold on.
Yeah. Okay.
Hold on. Madison wants to say, yes, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for having such a wonderful guest. Rob wants to say we're in tears. Alexis wants to say thank you so much. Rob says she calls me overprotective. There's just so many wonderful comments in our chat tonight for you being here, and it's just been, it's just been education for us too. You know, it's interesting because people think because they have the internet, they have this like they have this like universal view of the world. And I don't really think that that's true, because I think the internet is just an animal, and how you use it or how you approach it, you know, that depends on how you receive information, you know. And you being here tonight and being real and being live with us and really telling us what's going on, it's just partly what makes the show amazing. And I sincerely thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you so much.
Is there anything else you'd like to say before I close out this?
No, I already spoke a lot, I think so.
All right. So I'm going to close this show out tonight. You don't have to sign off. Nobody who's on Skype right now needs to sign off. But I just want to personally thank everybody who watched tonight, who asked questions tonight, who shared the show tonight. You know, hit subscribe and follow and all that other good shit. And thank you all so much for being here tonight.
I don't believe in love.
Still will kill, swill, blood stains, cheap thrills, beat the fuck out your boyfriend at Mill Hill.
We're at the Mill Hill where we happen to kill it. Back and we fillin' with the illest, chillin' with the realest music crew. Real as a film and it's feeling like a movie too. Shooting to the moon and my dude Lagoon is booming through. In a van with weed man, feeling like it's Scooby-Doo. We found a spot when we turned around the block like Rubik's Cube. To the bass bumping when it rumbles with the thunder sound. Music coming out from the basement cause it's underground. Searching to kill, holding urban to bill. There ain't a hole in my pocket when I'm burning the mill. Stairwell blazing weed, y'all blatantly won't take a stairwell cause my eyes shoot laser beams. It's Frankie B, always reppin' out T-Rock cassette. Feel the draft even if you tape the doors like rock cassettes. Dropping bread like Uma Thurman when I kill Bill. $1 at a time till we got a Mill Hill. Yeah, when the beat drops in the stairwell we twist up the sweet spot. Yeah, when the beat drops, if the door locks it opens with 3 knocks. Yeah, when the beat drops, 4 sticker balls around the stage we rock. Yeah, when the beat drops, it's a Mill Hill set. We'll make you wanna rewatch.
Tupac the tour rock, the dinosaur hunter. Dudes stuck in their wonder years, mistook it for hunger. Mill Hill is the headquarters for old heads and youngsters. The basement is for hip hop, but it was founded by punkers. I've been there every night for a decade and a half, drowning my sorrows while still laughing at crap. Used to run out on my tab, now I'm part of the staff. Lied on my resume, got by on basic math. Enticed by the drink, seduced by the music. Always open doors back up after a shooting. Sometimes I got a box, but it's still the spot that's soothing. Who would have thought a dark, dirty basement would move me? Been all around the globe eating bohemian pizza. Paris is a runner-up, but Stripe, Trenton needs ya. A city full of artists, but it's not for the weak, bruh. The Mill Hill basement, South Broad Street, love.
Yeah, when the beat drops in the stairwell we twist up the sweet spot. Yeah, when the beat drops, if the door locks it opens with 3 knocks. Yeah, when the beat drops, 4 sticker balls around the stage we rock. Yeah, when the beat drops, it's a Mill Hill set. We'll make you wanna rewatch. Yeah,
Still will kill, swill, blood stains, cheap thrills, beat the fuck out your boyfriend at Mill Hill. Still will kill, swill, blood stains, cheap thrills, beat the fuck out your boyfriend at Mill Hill.
Awesome talk. We got some awesome talk today. Awesome talk, oh awesome talk. You're like the way we talk. It's awesome, awesome talk, oh awesome talk. You like the way we awesome talk. It's awesome talk, fucking awesome talk. You like the way we talk. It's fucking awesome. Ooh, yeah.